Hello and welcome to the Srijan Wednesday webinars. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, this is a community initiative by Srijan Technologies, where you can tune into a variety of sessions across the fields of technology, entrepreneurship, and community building. In today's session, we are joined by Jesus Martin, product designer at BEEVA Labs. In this session, Jesus takes us through the history of chatbots, how far we have come in terms of user interaction design, and the current challenges in development. He then takes us through a detailed design framework to build chatbots that work. Before we begin, I would request all participants to please type in any questions that you have during this presentation, and we'll take them up in the last 15 minutes of this session. Also, please don't forget to take the conversation live on Twitter using our hashtag StrigenWW. You can share your thoughts by tagging us in your tweets using our handle @Strigen. Now that that's over, let's get right to it. Jesus, over to you.
Hello, thank you for inviting me to this session. I'm Jesus Martin, I'm UX designer. You can find my Twitter account at choose9000. As you perfectly explained, I work for BEEVA. You can find all the information in our webpage, beeva.com. We like to say that we make complex things simple. BEEVA is part of the BBVA group, which is one of the biggest banks here in Spain. We have more than 900 employees, and we work with cloud computing, big data, machine intelligence, and with all those technology you can find there. I specifically work in the innovation department, labs.beeva.com. What we do there is basically R&D. We play with new technologies, we prototype solutions, and try to find the best out of them. Related to chatbots, we have prototyped a few of them. Actually, there are more than these ones, around 8 or more, 10, something like that. What we try to do in each one is testing some different technologies, some different ways of interact with users, and then spread what we learn in talks like this one, or in international events, and also in articles. Last February, I published this article. Thanks to that, you found me, and thanks to that I'm having this webinar with you. And I'm starting right now a different project, which is called Chatbot Test. You can find all the information in the webpage, which is basically a guide for helping everybody testing any chatbot. Today's talk is not about testing, it's about how to design a chatbot that works. I'm going to be talking about 3 different sections. First, I'm going to talk about the certain moment we are living in. And then I'll try to set the expectation about what can we expect from chatbots with the technology that we have nowadays. And then I will go to the third section, which is becoming a hero. How can we use the technology that is on the market to do something that is useful for our users? So let's start. So about the zero moment, 2016 was called the year of messaging. Every newspaper in the world was saying that messaging were spreading everywhere, that bots were going to be like a big thing that year. But everything didn't really started then. Actually, I'm going to make a brief history about chatbots and about artificial intelligence a little bit, because I think it's really important to understand where we come from to see where we can go. So we can find our first era, which was the Turing test quest, where Joseph Weissenbaum and Alan Turing, started wondering if computers could communicate like humans do. That's why they created the Turing test. Basically, what the test was meant for was a computer would deserve to be called intelligent if it could deceive a human into believing that it was a human. It didn't try to find if the computer was intelligent or not. It only tried to see if it could deceive a human. So it didn't try to see if the answers were correct or not, but only if it could cheat a human being. In 1966, the first chatbot was ever coded. It's not something that new. We are living in that time that we think that we invented chatbots. But Elisa was the first one. She was a therapist, and she mainly helped you and gave you some advices about common stuff like I didn't sleep well, what could I do, things like really easy as that. In 1972, it was Parry who made his appearance, Parry the Paranoid, and soon in 1973 they put Parry and Elisa to talk to each other. We had the therapist and we had the paranoid. So all those experiments that we are seeing nowadays on the news and so on are not from these days, are from 1973, like two chatbots talking to each other. In 1990, the Lardner Prize was set. It tried to find which artificial intelligence of the year was more like human being. And in 1992 appeared Dr. Sbaitso, and that stands for Sound Blaster Artificial Intelligence Technical, and I don't remember the SO and the O, but basically was the first time about was able to use voice. And soon in 2000s, Alice appeared, and it was the first chatbot that used an avatar. It was really interesting because for being using that avatar, it made something else appear, which were the bad words. Because she was a woman, people started to tell to her some bad words, and only because she had a face, which is interesting when you are deciding what you are designing. In 2001, it was Eugene Guzman who was released. It's really an interesting example because it was the first one that passed the Turing test. Actually, it was a prediction by Alan Turing that by the year 2000, an artificial intelligence would be able to pass the Turing test, and it was in 2001. But it was quite controversial because a lot of people said that it wasn't fair because he was a child, and because he was a child, there was a lot of people not talking like if they were talking with an older one. So they were talking about topics that a child could understand, and that made him pass the test. This is also interesting when we. It's the same example as I talked with Alice. Just because the personality of the chatbot, some people are going to be saying bad words to our chatbot, or in this case, some people is going to think that it's more intelligent than it really is. In 2001, Smarter Child was the first one integrated into a messaging platform like Messenger. Okay. And we arrived to a second era, which is the mobile disruption. Basically, in 2010, with the appearance of smartphones, and we all could afford having a smartphone in our pocket, assistants started to appear like general AI agents. So Siri made his appearance in 2010. Cortana for Microsoft as well, and then Alexa for Amazon, like the assistant you can have in your living room. And following steps of Amazon, Google Home appeared, and the last one, HomePod for Apple. I'm gonna show you now something about what was the top technology in virtual assistants and so on, which is BEEVA nowadays. And they are from the Siri founders. And I'm going to put you a short video for about 1.5 minutes where the founder explains and shows some of the functionalities they have implemented.
BEEVA as a platform is built so that developers can come in and make things quite easily and create experiences that are fairly straightforward in a short period of time. But it also has the capability of allowing developers to create much more complex experiences. And so what I'm going to do here is use a few weather examples to start it off to show you sort of the spectrum of what it can do. So starting on sort of the basic. What's the weather like at home today? Right? Pretty straightforward. Our friends from Weather Underground get it. Pretty straightforward type of a query. But let's ratchet it up a little bit. Was it raining in Seattle 3 Thursdays ago? Right, so great, Weather Underground to the rescue again. But as you can see, BEEVA has a much stronger understanding when you can teach it and develop the natural language aspects of it. And I'm going to take another even bigger leap to sort of a question that you might not ask actually, but just to show you a little more of the power. Will it be warmer than 70 degrees near the Golden Gate Bridge after 5 p.m. the day after tomorrow? Okay, so this is a pretty sophisticated query.
Okay, mainly that was all. It's incredible, right? It's something we all would like to have in our cell phones, but it's still something that is not yet in our cell phones. This is not the technology we are using. Samsung is implementing that with Bixby, but we are still not living that. So the technology we need to work with is not as advanced as that. There is a third era in this evolution of chatbots and so on, is when the messaging app bots make like this big boom. 7 years ago, we all had like many different apps, but nowadays we are only using messaging apps. And we have like this many, or even more in each country. There is like the specific message app for that country. And they have like these thousands and millions of users, which no app has ever had. You have WhatsApp, you have Facebook Messenger, QQ Mobile, WeChat, Skype, Snapchat, all of them with millions of users. And the platform leading this messenger, this bots boom is basically Facebook Messenger. Depending on where you find the information, they say they have 30,000 or 100,000 bots. What is clear is the 1 million users they have every month. And because the importance of these messaging platforms and chatbots and so on, every single company involved is creating the whole ecosystem. So they have, Google has his own general AI agents. It's got his own messaging platform. It also has his own natural language processor platform and his own frameworks to develop those chatbots. And it's the same for Amazon, the same for Facebook, the same for all those big companies working with those technologies. They want to have the whole stack of technologies. But let's think a little bit about how chatbots are using and how can we use them. You probably have seen this number, but it's said by Gartner that by 2020, the customer will manage 85% of its relationship with an enterprise without interacting with a human. So the main uses for chatbots, or at least the predicted uses for chatbots, are basically quick emergency answers, forwarding to appropriate human, buy basic items, and compliant resolution. The rest are a little bit farther from that. So interesting, that thing of quick emergency answers and forwarding to appropriate human. It's like we are going to be setting a filter for addressing people to the correct person. About the benefits we can find in chatbots versus apps, there is this thing of 24-hour service. There's also the quick answer to simple questions, and the convenience. It's like really convenient to have always someone or a chatbot to talk to and to solve our problem. Some use cases that I wanted to show you. The first one in banking was Sky. We in BBVA, we have also developed a few solutions, but Kai was the first one. In health, there are also a few examples, like Health Tab, that gives you common advice on health. It's really easy. Also for e-commerce, for Pizza Hut. Okay, but now, after making all this background and after seeing how technology is nowadays and some of the use cases, I think it's important to talk about the expectations. What can we expect from chatbots? Because when I talk with people about artificial intelligence and about chatbots specifically, we are all expecting something like Her from the movie. I'm not gonna make a spoiler here, but basically, Joaquin Phoenix is the main actor. Mainly, I mean, he falls in love with a virtual assistant, and we all would like to have this sort of virtual assistants we can even fall in love with. But actually, the reality nowadays with chatbots is something more like this, where we develop a robot, kind of, and he wants to start up, but he's not able, and he falls all the time. This is not what we want, but this is what our users are seeing, and this is what our users are talking to. This is something that we all know in the industry. This is from Chatbot.com 2016, last year. This was like the gift they gave to everybody. Where, what do we want, chatbots? When do we want them? Sorry, I didn't understand your request. So we all know in the industry of chatbots that we're still facing a lot of problems to be useful for a lot of users. And the reason the reason because of that is really easy. Is the technology is not still there. This is an article from VentureBeat where it says part of the misfire with the conversational aspect of bots has to do with the fact that the natural language processing and artificial intelligence are simply not as complex as managing human-like conversation as human are. So we need to face that. We are way better than machines to managing conversations. It's still like far away from our possibilities to understand what a human being is saying by a machine. I mean. And that's because NLP is really a complex duty. You know, natural language is meant for efficient communication among humans, not among machines, or not for a machine understanding a human being. And because it's meant to be efficient, we are ambiguous, and we skip a lot of common sense information when we are talking. I'm gonna give a few examples of both of them. About that ambiguity, we have ambiguity on a world level. For instance, Spain in English can be a noun or a verb, and on every in different language has this sort of ambiguities. Or the example of plant, which in English have a lot of meanings. There's also a syntactic ambiguity. For instance, in those examples, foreigners are hunting dogs, or the man showed a kid with a telescope. Who had the telescope? Was a man showing the kid, or was the kid that was wearing or carrying a telescope? It's something that we can mainly understand as human beings, but it's pretty difficult for a machine to understand it and to find those slight difference. About the skipping information, we, while speaking, use anaphors and co-references. For instance, in this example, Juan stopped for a coffee in a bar before eating on a restaurant. The waiter was from Italy. The bar's waiter, the restaurant's waiter, probably because it's closer to the restaurant, any machine would understand that it's restaurant's waiter. But it's probably, we as humans, we probably would understand this the waiter from the bar, right? And we also make assumptions. For instance, in the example, Pablo doesn't run anymore. We are assuming that Pablo used to go running. That is an information that is not there in the sentence, but we are able to understand it, but a machine is not able to do it yet. these all complications bring us to three implications. The first one in chatbot development is this one. This is a sample taken from Big Bang Theory, which says, if you don't mind, I'd like to stop listening to you. And it's basically what chatbots are doing nowadays, because they are not able to understand human beings. They are sometimes not even listening. They are just reacting to buttons and things like those. The one that paved the way for bots was Google with their rich cards. Basically, there is a link there you can check by VentureBeat. Basically said in the same way that Google is pushing all those rich information into their search, and you don't need to go to a web page, you can do everything directly on a card. We are going to be doing the same for chatbots. So we have like these carousels, we have like all these buttons, we have hamburger menus, we have everything we used to have on all interfaces, and we are bringing them back here because NLP is pretty complex yet. The second implication about this complexity is that for the last 2 years, I've been looking all rankings in chatbots, and mainly all the time the same chatbots are like in the top one positions. Like Poncho is still the top one for the last 2 years. Mojihan, ChatShopper, Sure is allocated. It hasn't changed in the last 2 years mainly. And if we test any of them, they are not really clever. The use case is not really, I wouldn't say interesting, but I would say it's not that complex. You know, I don't know how, do we really need, I love Poncho, but do we really need a chatbot for giving us the weather, which is what Poncho does? So I wanted to date my chatbot, and Poncho is not someone I could date. It's only the cat that gives me the weather, you know. The third implication about this complexity is that anytime anybody says anything about a chatbot, it's enough to make him look like an expert. So there are less experts out there, but there are a lot of people doing some sort of experiments and things like those. And there is still a lot we have to develop, and we have to learn from technology and from users to make things really useful. But despite all this information, I still love bots. I still love robots, and I think we can do a lot of things with them. That's why I'm going to talk about how can we take all those problems we have with the technology and become this sort of hero. As I published in February, I talk about this design, what I call design framework for chatbots. And there I mainly talk about 4 different situations you need to think whenever you start designing a chatbot. The first one is the bot scope. Basically, if you are, this is not me, I have to say, this is Matti Martinson. This is from Chatbot Conference 2016. And the information here is pretty clear. If you are Google, you can think of building a Skynet. But if you are not, you need to focus on something really specific, as the examples we saw before, like Poncho and so on. The 2 things we need to take into account, we really need to think, what is the one thing we are offering to our users? We shouldn't be thinking of building something really big. Maybe we should think about what is the one thing we are going to be solving to our users. Is it helping them buy? Is it, I don't know, helping them find where to go? But it has to be just one small thing. The second thing we need to think is, why is that better than with traditional interfaces? You know, there is all this hype, but we need to think thoroughly if we are solving problems in a better way, or if we are just using technology because it's nice and it's wow. We really need to think about that. the best way to set the scope when we design our chatbot is leaving it clear in the welcome message. So, for instance, in this case, this was something that we developed. It was a shopping chatbot. It's the one that I mentioned in my framework. And he says, "Hi, I'm your shopping chatbot, and I can help you buy the best smartphone in the market." Another example taken from the internet. "Hey, Jesus, so here's the deal. I do Q&A and updates about my ride here on Messenger. It's actually really easy. Just tap menu to get started." So she's telling you what she's able to do and how to start, which is really important. Also, in the error messages, we need to leave really clear what's our scope about. If you ask him or ask her about something she's not able to, we need to make clear what's the scope of our chatbot. Otherwise, our users are going to be lost all the time. My piece of advice about the scope, we need, as I already said previously, we need to keep it really simple and with low functionality. Nowadays, every attempt of doing something really complex and with a lot of functionality is not working. So it's better to start small with something that solves our users' problem, or at least some a small problem from our users, and then try to grow from there. About the second point, about the chatbot personality, in the example that I mentioned previously about Eugene Guzman, the first one that passed the Turing test, it was really interesting because he was a child. Because he was a child, people was talking to him like if he was a child. When deciding what's the personality of our chatbot, we need to be consistent in all the messages. We need to have our writers or whoever takes care of that writing messages that are consistent with all each other, with a guide of a personality. And they need to be adapted to our audience. It's not the same. You are working for a bank and your users are people that expect to be talking with a bank, that if we are working with a hospital, we really need to know our users and talk to them in the way they want. For doing this, we can start like really easy. We need to just with thinking, how is our chatbot? Is it like a rock star? Is it like a lawyer? Is it like a butler? Is it like a teenager? Is it like a teacher? That's the most simple way we can think about our chatbot, but it's going to be leading how our chatbot is going to be talking to our users. If we're going to go a little bit further, we can write this sort of persona template for our chatbot, where we can go further, writing his name, the age, the studies, the profession, the bio. This is going to be like a great guide for us, for guiding us on every message, and it's going to help our user empathize with us. If you want to learn everything about personalities, I strongly recommend this book. It's called Designing for Emotion from Aaron Walter. It doesn't talk about chatbots because chatbots weren't that fancy 4 or 5 years ago when he wrote this book. But he talks about how software can be emotional and how can we design and decide what to do with our interfaces. The best example they give there, because chatbots weren't fancy, is MailChimp, which is a platform for sending emails, where main role is a monkey. And they have created this whole guide explaining how is a monkey, how he behaves, and in every scenario. You can find all the information in the web page, voiceandtone.com. But mainly he says that it's funny but not silly, confident but not cocky, smart but not snobby. It's like they have this whole behavior guide for this monkey. Regarding chatbots, the best example I have found is Poncho, which I mentioned previously. They also have this persona profile about the cat, where they have like all the information related. And it's really, I was in a talk recently, like a week ago, from this girl from the Poncho's team, and she explained how this guide helped them in everything and helped them have their users engaged and have the users forgiving them for all those problems, all the errors that Poncho had. Okay, but at this point, I always make this question. For many developers and for many product managers, might be thinking, okay, this might be funny, but personality is not that important, right? We can skip it and we can go directly to the artificial intelligence and to the flows and so on. I couldn't recommend that, basically because of two reasons. The first one is an emotional reason. We are talking to users on their platforms, where they normally have their families and their relatives and so on, and they are interacting in a different way. They're going to be telling hi to your chatbot. They're going to be saying thank you to your chatbot, goodbye. Things like it's not normal at all to do with any other software, but what they do with chatbots because it's the place where they are used to interact. So it's really important to help them empathize with our chatbot by giving them a strong personality they can interact with. But there is not only an emotional reason, there is also a pragmatic reason. If you can see the first line, it's a representation of the existing words on any language. Try to understand that the green line is the 100% of words existing in any language. The second line and the yellow part is the words your bot is trained to understand, which is a really small part of all the existing words. We cannot take into account every single word on a language. We are not able to do that. There are going to be always cases that we are not able to cover. But in the third line, you see you have the words related with your personality, with the personality of your chatbot, which is the green line again. So if we craft a good personality, we are going to be narrowing a lot what words are people going to say to our chatbot, which is really interesting because we are going to be able to understand more from what they want. So we have seen the scope, we have seen the personality, and I'm going to be talking now about the list of must-have features in our chatbot. Basically, what I try to cover here is what people would expect from our chatbot. In the BEEVA case that I talked previously, what we did was we run different sort of research. We started talking with people that basically the BEEVA is a chatbot that help you buy technology online, like laptops, like smartphones and so on. So we talk with real buyers, real online buyers, people that is normally buys online. And we talked to a lot of them to understand what their problems were and what they expected from a chatbot and from something that helped them buy online. The second thing we did was running a type form, or we share it to all our platforms, and we get information from different places. And the third thing we did was basically researching directly on internet to see, because we are not e-commerce experts, we research on every retail and how they were doing on their own web pages, what was the most important information on their web pages to make people buy. What we found out is if we wanted the BEEVA to do anything interesting, we needed a lot of products. You won't go to any chatbot that sells technology if you ask him about a smartphone and it only has one brand. You need to have them all. It's the same for TVs, for tablets, for everything. We normally go to Amazon because they have everything. We rarely go to these small shops where they have only the specific product, unless we are these brand lovers and so on. The second thing we found out is that we needed product details about every single product, which is easy. Not providing them, but it was really understandable that everybody would need product details from the products. The third thing we found out was the pictures. Almost nobody buys anything if they can see a picture of the product. The fourth thing was opinions. There were people like entering every single website in the world trying to find different opinions about a product before acquiring anyone. This is really interesting for people that buys product. And the fifth thing they needed was different vendors. People normally, when want to buy technology, want to buy a new smartphone, don't rely in only one vendor. They go to different web pages and to different shops to see the different prices and to see the different warranties until they make their choice. So if we wanted the BEEVA to success in any way, we needed to have these 5 things covered. This is something that you only can learn when you talk with people and you talk with your real users. The fourth part is a chatbot flow, which cannot be like a decision tree. Okay, this is something that we all, as designers and developers, start with. We start crafting this. What happens if we don't do that? What happens if we do that? It might look like something like that, but it has to be slightly different, because decision trees can end up looking like something like this. You know, when you talk to a phone and there's this machine after the phone, and you start having this sort of loops that bring you to nowhere, and you get really frustrated. We cannot convert chatbot into something like that. The best article I found about how to solve this situation is called RAN, which stands for Random Access Navigation. And what they explain in that article is basically that you are, if you start on a welcome message and you want to go to a specific part, which is mainly what we do with a chatbot, we start on we could say a welcome message, and we want to go to reach somewhere. We are going to be needing some pieces of information in between. I'm going to explain this with the BEEVA. So we started with a welcome message that said something like, I'm the BEEVA, which help you buy products online. And we want to take our users to a specific product, like an iPhone X. What we need to know is the category of the products they are looking for, because the BEEVA was offering not only smartphones, but also TVs, also tablets, and every single technology product you can imagine. We will also need the brand of the product. It's not only I want a smartphone, it's I want a smartphone and I want it to be Samsung. And the third piece of information that we need is the model. So it ends up looking like something like this. So if a user tells us, I'm looking for an Apple, and because we are on a technology chatbot, we know it's the brand Apple. So what we have left here, besides the brand, is the category and the model. Instead of that, is if our user says, I'm looking for a smart TV, we already have the category, which is great, but we are going to be needing the brand of the model. Is it a Samsung TV? Is it an Apple TV? What kind of TV it is? And we also need the model. If the user says, give me an iPhone, okay, we know the category because we know iPhone is a smartphone, and we know the brand as well. But we have left the model because there is not only one iPhone in the market. The fourth scenario we can have is when a user says specifically what he wants. I want the Samsung S8, which is something great and sometimes happens. I normally use Xmind for creating the flows, but there are other tools out there. I've been presented to this one, which I haven't tested, but I've seen how it works and it looks great. It's called BotMock, and it's specifically for creating flows for chatbots. But if you have your own for creating these mind maps and so on, there are like plenty you can use out there. What I do, I end up creating something like this that you probably saw in the design framework article. But I'm gonna explain a little bit. I start with a legend of what I'm gonna be explaining on that map. In this case, I only put buttons, text, carousels, and a box for help text. It would depend on the platform you are designing for, because every single platform has different elements. So if you are designing, it's different if you are designing for Telegram, or if you are designing for Messenger, or if you are designing in Slack. They have all those different elements like buttons, menus, or and so on. And users interact in different ways in every single platform. So you need to really know how users are using the platform you are designing for. And what I do after leaving that clear for my developer, I set the welcome message. I start with something like, "Hi, I'm the BEEVA. Ask me about technological products, and I help you find the best price." Okay, that's the start point. But then there are 4 possible things that can happen with my interaction with a user. The user might be saying me something that I don't know at all. It might be saying something like a known category, which is great. Also like a known brand, and also like directly a known product. My aim is to take users from this welcome message to the known product. But these are the 4 possible scenarios. So the first scenario is when the user tells me something that I have no idea about. What I do is I create a message. This could be a sort of error message because I'm not understanding anything. And what I do is I try to take the users back to my scope and to the options that I manage. So what I do is I say, right now I don't know anything about that, but I can help you with these products. So I'm saying that I cannot do it, but I'm trying to take them back to what I can do. At the end, I always offer a menu option where you can see all the options. The second scenario is when someone asks you about a known category, as I said previously, telephone or a TV. Okay, what I do is I create a message where I say, okay, an iPhone. Sorry, a category is a TV. Great. Choose or write the brand or model you have in mind, because I already know the category. So as I explained before, I need to have the brand and the model right now. So I propose some options because if I don't propose anything, my users are gonna get lost. So I propose this brand 1 that I have, this brand 2 that I have, this brand 3 that I have, and then I give this option of show me every single brand. And I always leave or make a different error message for this scenario, because I know something. It's like, it's different if you don't know anything than if you know something. At this step, I know the category. So what I need to find out is the brand and the model. So I create these flows like that. The third scenario is when someone tells me a brand. So as I mentioned before, what I have left here is the model. So what I try to find out from my user is the model. So I tell them, perfect, these are the available Samsung models, for instance. And I give them options about the models. And I prepare also this error message that is specific, because I already know the category and I already know the brand. So all that I have left is the specific model. So I need to craft that error message asking for the model, not like a random error message that works for every case, which our users won't be likely to like. We need to be really helpful with our error messages as much as we can. And the fourth scenario is when our user reads the specific product. And this is where we set all that we had on our research. Like, we needed prices, we needed pictures, we needed details, we needed comments, and we needed an option to buy. So because we knew it from the research we did. We create these lines of, okay, this is I'm going to show you when you ask me for the price. This is what I'm going to show you when you ask me about pictures, the details, the comments, and the options I give you for buying. And I also create an error message, because it might happen that even being at this point where we know the product, we know the brand, and we know the model, that our user get lost and ask us about something like, I don't know, like the weather at this point. And we are already knowing the product, the brand, and the model. So we need to take him back and tell him, okay, I cannot do anything with weather. I know this from this specific product you told me. What do you want to do? Do you want to buy it? Do you want to see pictures? Do you want to see details? So we create this specific error message for them. And I always end up with some, I would say, yeah, it's a small talk, because users, as I mentioned previously, normally empathize a lot with chatbots and answers and tell chatbots things like those, like bye, thank you, right? What's the time today? What's the day today? And they also say bad words to our chatbots. They also say dirty words. Some of those behaviors are just for testing the chatbot and to see if the chatbot is able to understand anything. But for the experiment that we have run, this is like really normal behavior to have our users asking these sort of questions. We need to have prepared answers for them, and that don't get lost in this sort of conversation. We don't want to be the best talking about the day or talking about the time today. We have a goal, which is in our case was selling products online through a chatbot. So we need to take our users back to our scope. For instance, in the case of time, where I say it's time in city, great moment to get an iPhone, don't you think? So we need to take them back, because otherwise we are gonna start a conversation that we are not gonna be good managing. So it's better if okay, I know you are gonna ask me something about time. I am able to answer you about time, but I'm gonna take you back to my scope. So these were these 4 points, which some of you could already know. Explain them, but nowadays I'm working in this part of chatbot test, or this project of Chadwick Test, where I found some other points interesting to take decisions about when we create a chatbot, or when we design a chatbot. I've separated them in 7 different points. You can find the article online. It's called Playbook for Testing Chatbots. I also talk about personality, but it's also important to think really carefully about the onboarding, because it's the way our users are going to be understanding what we are all about. And if we don't do it right, they're going to get lost in some different parts. It's important to decide what we are in the understanding. What are we going to be able to understand? Are we going to be understanding everything? Will be able to understand images because people send us images? Will we be able to understand audios? Because sometimes our users send us audios. It's important to think about that as well. About answering and speaking, it's related to personality that I explained a little bit previously, but it's also about the technical part of how long are gonna be our messages. Are they gonna be full with images? Are we gonna be using emojis? Navigation, we mainly talk about that, but also things that help users navigate through our chatbot, because somehow our users are navigating with our system. It's also really important to think about the error message. We cannot prepare just one error message for every case. That doesn't work at all. And there is also this part of intelligence that we already said that chatbots nowadays are not that intelligent, but there are some tricks we can play with chatbots, like having that sort of memory, this sort of general knowledge about stuff. We can implement in our chatbots, and that will make our chatbots look more like human beings. And basically, that is all that I had for you. So now it's time for questions.
Thank you, Jesus, for taking us through that really informative session and taking us through the design framework as well. So now I would like to say to our audience, if you have any questions, now would be the time to type them in and I can take them up with Jesus. So while our audience do that, I already have a couple of questions that from the audience that I would like to take up with you. So first up, the kind of framework that you shared in terms of understanding the chatbot decision making or the logic that goes into it. So once you have that sort of thing in place, how long do you think it takes to go from a chatbot idea to have a fully functional chatbot?
It depends on how many functionality we want to implement. There are cases of chatbots implement. We have run prototypes that were developed in a few hours. There are solutions to create really easy chatbots with things like ChatFuel and things like those that are not really clever, are not clever at all, but for some scenarios and for some cases are more than okay. And for other use cases, we are, for instance, in the bank, in the BEEVA, I know they've been like months for developing a specific one. Depends on how difficult how much functionality you want to add, and how complicated it is. Also depends on how much research you need to make. It's really dependable. I couldn't say it can go from 4 hours to 6 months or it's really dependable.
All right. So also in your opinion, is it always advisable to have your chatbot concentrate on performing or offering only one specific service? Does it work better in terms of design when you're only focused on offering one very specific functionality, like you did with the BuyBot or Poncho, as you said, there's focused on one specific thing. So is it always the case that good chatbots always do one specific thing and do it well?
Yeah, exactly. It's totally my piece of advice here. In these 2 years, I have tested like hundreds of chatbots. Some of them were like really wanted to make it really high and really wanted to do a lot of things, and they are finding a lot of problems. It's better to make a lean approach, start with something smaller and grow from there. It's the best way to do it. It's the only way to do it, as far, in my opinion. It's what I always recommend to all our clients.
All right. Another question that I have here is that, is it necessary while building the chatbot that everything needs to be hard coded?
Not at all. In BEEVA, we don't do it that way. I'm not really on the development part, but we try to run fast solutions. So yeah, and there are already some libraries out there to help you create most of what you want to create. So you only need to put some design and some core intelligence to that. So yeah.
Okay, so during your session, you also mentioned or put some emphasis on getting your chatbot's personality in place, both for emotional reasons and pragmatic reasons. So is this personality, is it something completely up to the person who is designing, or are there certain guidelines to, help you get to what sort of a personality you want your chatbot to have?
Yeah. the advice here is always talk with the potential users. Normally, a chatbot is not the first approach from a brand. They normally have they can have a web page, or they can have some other platforms. They have already in contact with some users. If you don't have contact with previous users, you need to find them. So you need to try to understand how they think and how they are going to be likely to talk to you. I talked with a chatbot a few days ago, and probably it was for younger people, but he talked to me like really, really bad. I don't like it at all. It was like, I'm not 16 anymore. Why are you talking to me like that? So you really need to understand your users. There's going to be probably in a lot of places these brand guides. You are working with a client that already has like this big platform of users or whatever. They probably are going to be having these brand guides. But even in those cases, you need to understand how your users in messaging platforms are, and need to understand them and create something specific for them. You cannot create something that works for everybody. You need to know your potential users in that specific moment and in that specific platform.
Okay, all right. I think it looks like we're nearing the end of our session time as well. So one last question I have is that at the beginning of your session, you talked about how there are a lot of chatbots being built today, and how a major portion of the enterprises are going to be interacting with their customers via these chatbots. So could you just throw some light on the sort of scope that is there for chatbots in the future, as in how profitable it is it going to be for enterprises to start investing in chatbots?
Well, I think in the near future, we're going to be seeing this sort of filters for, as I showed you on a slide about it. So this having chatbots like filters to the right person. So instead of having this call center with thousands of people or hundreds of people, we can have this sort of filter with a chatbot. I mean, in a few years or maybe months, when we are already seeing this sort of things, like chatbots for filtering information to the right people. This is the closest future, the near future. I don't know how this is going to evolve. I don't. Probably we are going to be seeing something like in the movie from Her, but we are still far from that. But I think we're going to be living exciting times.
Sure. I think on that note, that's a good note to close our session for tonight. And once again, thank you, Jesus, for taking us through that really informative session. And thanks to all our audience for joining us today and enjoying the session and having such great questions for our speakers. So I would just like to inform you that the session recording from today would be in your inbox by sometime tomorrow, and we hope to also see you for our subsequent webinars. Once again, thanks everyone for joining us today. That's all from us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.